This is a reading based on the astrological houses during a super full moon in Aries. And since this is the first video on the channel, we're going to use the cards that we draw tonight as a tutorial for how to use the moon and the 12 houses as tools for self-study. This is a reading for all signs, and if you know your rising sign, you'll be able to apply it. If you don't know it, you can apply all this to your sun, what's often called your star sign. But we can also use the energy of the houses and the phase of the moon to create a spread that applies to all of us. And that starts with a supermoon that's magnifying emotions for everyone right now. And especially for Aries and Aries rising, because the moon is in Aries right now, putting Aries in what I usually call the seat of intention. And because the sun is in Libra, that's the star sign that sits in the hot seat for this season. In the tutorial, we'll talk about why this works the way it does, but right now, Aries and Libra are the only signs sitting in what I'm going to call their natural positions as far as the houses go. So Aries rules the first house, and that's where we'll start. But since this isn't an astrological reading so much as it is a card reading to study common themes, we'll take a little extra time to make correlations that apply to everyone. And if you're not so interested in divination, I want you to know that we are looking for a practice that's far more prescriptive than predictive. And every reading is timeless because I really believe that you find the information that you need when you're supposed to find it. And because we're working in this more practical realm, there's always something to work on, or at least to consider, in every area of life. And the deck that we're using is actually one of my decks. It's the Self-Study Tarot, focused on the original Rider-Waite-Smith images. But you can do this with any deck, and you can do this with any kind of cards. Tarot cards can be especially useful because they cover all the bases in the human experience, much like the houses, and that's what we're looking to study. In an effort for full disclosure, I'm not an astrologer. I'm not pretending to be an astrologer. And if you are an astrologer, I welcome your comments, your feedback, and your guidance. But again, it isn't so much an astrological reading as it is a card reading based on the astrological houses. And more than even a card reading, this is a tool for looking at different areas of your life. And we've got a chart that we can put at the center of the reading to help us do that more effectively. So we're going to zoom in to talk about the chart at the center of the spread as a guide for that purpose. We start with the 12 signs and their symbols at the outside edge of this circle and the houses that they rule, their planets, and then on the inner circle, we've got the numbers for the houses. Starting on the left side of the chart with Aries and the first house in just below 9 o'clock position, and we start moving in a counterclockwise circle all the way around until we get to Pisces. Now, we are primarily interested in the meaning of each house right now and the area of life that it represents, so we start with Aries. Aries is the ruler of the house of identity, the sense of self, beginnings, and first impressions. It also has a lot to do with the way other people see you and the way you present yourself. And this first house is set by your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, I'll link some sites in the description so you can go find out. I have no affiliation with them, but there are many, and many of them are free. And I will say the whole thing does get even more interesting if you do know your rising sign, but it doesn't really matter so much for this reading because, like I said, we all have a little bit of everything in our charts. And since this is the primary energy for this full moon, everybody's probably feeling a whole lot of energy in the house of self. The second house is ruled by Taurus, focused on what you value most on the physical plane with physical experiences and possessions and money and all the physical senses, creating a very earthy and usually pretty practical energy. And Gemini rules the third house, the house of communication. I usually call that the house of thought because it does correlate very specifically to intellect and the written word, but not surprisingly, the twins can relate to siblings and social interactions. Cancer is at the base of the chart, planting its roots in home and family, focused on emotional security, sometimes focused on childhood, and very often on what's happening in the inner world. Leo is the ruler of the house of pleasure. This fifth house is about creativity and confidence, romance, vitality, fun, play, and sometimes the ego and self-interests. The sixth house is ruled by Virgo. This is the house of health and wellness and applies to lifestyle and daily routines, organizational skills, and even the work that you do to serve other people. The seventh house is ruled by Libra, focused on partners and relationships of all kinds, collaborations and commitments. And also for me, this really is the house of finding balance. The eighth house is the house of transformation, ruled by Scorpio, incorporating the cycles of life, all the way from birth to death, including rebirth, reproduction, mystery, and very often emotions that lie hidden just beneath the surface. Sagittarius rules the ninth house. It's the house of purpose and expansion, of higher learning, inspiration, travel, and adventure. The 10th house is ruled by Capricorn, focused on ambition and career, achievements, rules, and authority. The 11th house is what I usually call the house of blessing, ruled by Aquarius, primarily focused on friendships and community, but also including innovation, humanitarianism, and all of our hopes for the future. Finally, the 12th house is ruled by Pisces, and this is the house of release and retreat. It represents the subconscious and the shadow, the spirituality, dreams, transitions, and for me, Pisces really is the sign that most clearly represents the moon. And because we're reading for the moon phase, there's a little twist that we need to apply to that original chart. We just went through the houses, starting with Aries and going around in a counterclockwise circle to Pisces, and they will stay in those positions for our reading, but the influence on each house changes when we start considering the position of the moon, because the moon is always moving through the houses and it's moving in a clockwise motion. For this super full moon in October of 2025, it's in the first house for Aries, and that's a really good place for us to start. Remember, that's where Aries rules. And because Libra is directly across from Aries, it's the only other sign that's in its natural position right now. The sun is in Libra, so the first house and the seventh house are the only ones that have the moon in the house that they rule on these two charts. I'm not going to go into exactly why that is, or we'd be here all night, but in this second chart, I've laid the houses out in the opposite direction. Now, I'm sure there's someone out there who knows more about astrological charts than I do that could do a better job setting up this second chart, but the only thing that makes sense to me here in card reading land is to lay them all out with the primary focus of each house out there on the outer edge so that we can keep track of what the moon's doing. And the only way I could really think of to clearly illustrate what's happening here is to put all the signs that rule the houses on the outside edge of the circle, just to keep them stationary in their natural order, with Aries still in that first position and the moon in the first house for Aries. But now the inner circle represents the placement of the moon, and focusing on the left side of the image to make it easy, you've got Aries and the full moon and Pisces and Taurus on either side. And because of the position of the moon, we're focused on the 12th house for Taurus and the second house for Pisces. And next month, the full moon in Taurus will light up the 12th house for Aries, the 11th house for Taurus, and the first house for Pisces. And around we go. And again, I'm not an astrologer. I don't think I'm qualified to explain exactly why it is this way, but I do like to read it like this because the focus of a reading does change when you consider the correlations that can be made between the energy of a specific sign and the energy of the moon in a different house for that sign. When I laid out all the cards for this reading in the video, the super full moon was in Aries in the first house, but by the time I post this, it'll already be in Taurus and not even a completely full moon anymore. Who knows, it might even be in Gemini by then. And on October 21st, we'll have a new moon in Libra. And because the moon moves through the houses pretty quickly, by the time we get to the next full moon on November 25th, it will have moved through all the houses, moved just past Aries, and be back in Taurus again. So how do we even have enough time to study the energy and do anything meaningful with the reading before everything changes again? That's why it's worth it for us to talk just briefly about the moon phases, their impact on the houses, and why I focus specifically on the energy of the new and full moon. I usually only do astrological card readings for the full moon and the new moon, partially because that's when those energies seem the strongest, but also because I want one for studying what I want to grow in the month to come, and another one to study what needs to go before I get into the next one. And I suppose you could do this kind of work on the 1st and the 15th of the month, but as far as I'm concerned, the moon was the first calendar and the sun was the first clock, and I think they both carry a lot of energy that we can learn to work with in our everyday lives. Star signs, sun signs are based on the sun and transition into another sign about every 30 days, but the moon transitions into another sign every 2.5 to 3 days. So that's usually only about 60 hours. But I do believe there's a whole lot of energy that we can work with during those 2 nights every month when the moon is full and the moon is brand new, and we can take the next 2 weeks to work with it. For the next 2 weeks, the moon will be waning, getting a little smaller every day, moving through different signs. We can use the cards from this big full moon energy to work through those themes that come from the reading. And then we'll have the new moon, and it'll spend about 2 weeks waxing and growing, and we'll have some new themes to study. There are lots of different ways that you can use the template for this spread, but no matter how I read it, I do keep the cards themselves in the order that the houses are set up most commonly. And this looks pretty close to what we've got sitting here on the table. If I'm doing this reading at the new moon, I usually lay the cards out clockwise to represent the waxing moon and read them counterclockwise in order of the houses. But today, for the full moon, we're going to lay them out in the same order that we're going to read them, keeping everything moving together counterclockwise to represent the waning phases of the moon. We're going to start our reading with Aries and Aries rising in the house of self with the 8 of Swords. And this is what I call the open your eyes card. We're zooming in again to look at the card and the message from the digital version of the deck. And just to be clear, the hard copy version only has this first face on the left, but on the Deckable app, you can have more than one face to a card. So we've got all the information that comes from the physical guidebook here. And no matter which version you're using, the backgrounds for all the cards correlate to the suits and have just a really brief keyword type message at the bottom. In the guidebook and on Deckable, we've got other aspects that we can study. And we're not going to go into all of these today, but you can get a feeling for the energy of the chakras that might be in play, a planetary correlation, the sign that relates specifically to the card, the element that relates specifically to the card, and then kind of a yes or no answer. And then we've got the message for that card in the center. And for me, swords are all reflection cards. I think this makes a lot of sense for the first house with energies running high right now. Taking extra time to reflect before taking action or reacting is probably wise. This is a card of knowing that most of your limitations are self-imposed. And the idea that during more volatile times, you might actually be the cause of emotional disturbance in your life. The 8 of Swords is usually considered a no card or a wait card, and that could certainly apply here, even if only in that this might not be the time to take action, or at least to wait until you've got your emotions under control before making any big moves with some of these bigger culminating themes in life. Because Aries can be such a powerful sign, and every card has more than one meaning. I think This is a reminder to make sure you've got your energy straight before taking action. The house of self and personal identity is always calling for action that comes from a place of authenticity and integrity. Going back to the reading with the Page of Wands for Taurus and Taurus rising, Taurus is the ruler of the second house, but right now with the moon in the 12th house for Taurus, it's all about release and what's happening in the subconscious, which is definitely full moon energy. But this is an intention card. And it's a pretty fiery card representing all three fire signs with a whole lot of untamed energy. So setting the intention to embrace opportunity, especially if you've got something that's speaking to you right now, or there's some enthusiasm behind a project that you want to start, absolutely embrace it. But again, with the moon in the 12th house, this isn't really a time for impulsive or extreme action. And that can be frustrating if you have something that you really want to do. But with this house and all the signs entering the waning and releasing phase, all that Taurus get busy and do something on the physical plane energy is probably best applied with some attention first to what's happening in your inner world. All of the pages are still in the learning stages of life, and this one really is learning how to harness the energy needed for whatever lies ahead and how to keep it moving in the right direction. And this is an opportunity for letting go of all the stuff that doesn't serve you anymore and to put your focus more on what's happening in the inner world and the energy of the subconscious realm, and to set your intentions on the energy of possibility. For Gemini and Gemini rising, we've got the Two of Swords with the moon in the 11th house, and the planetary correspondence for this card is the moon. And we've even got a moon up there in the sky in the artwork from the Rider-Waite-Smith illustration. This is a Libra card, but it always brings Gemini to mind for me because Gemini is usually all about communication and thinking. The 11th house is ruled by Aquarius, and it's about the blessings that come from community and friendships, and it might turn your attention to social interactions or relationships with siblings, or in this position, your feelings of friendship and focusing on the blessings in your life. With this card in this position, maybe there are decisions that need to be made right now about those relationships, or some healing that can happen if you're willing to take down your guard. If you're standing at a crossroads or a fork in the road, it can be seen as another opportunity and a blessing. And another card that always makes me consider what might happen if you just took off the blindfold and looked around at all the good things that you might be missing by refusing to make a change for the better. It's a maybe card because you really do have options to consider. So maybe spend the next couple of weeks studying anything that's been keeping you stuck in the area of better relationships. The Page of Cups is sitting in the 10th house for Cancer and Cancer rising. The 10th house is ruled by Capricorn and generally focused on ambition and career and authority of all kinds, which can sometimes clash with Cancer's natural focus on home and family. And the Page of Cups absolutely lives in that ocean of emotion. We've already got 2 pages here. So again, there's definitely something to learn, and applying that energy in the house of ambition can bring up some interesting themes. It might be a time to study some of the feelings that have been either holding you back or leading to impulsive decisions in your career or plans for the future. This could have something to do with any part of you that's been struggling against authority or the rules of society. But the biggest correlation for me here is that there really might be something that you've been working on for a while that's finally happening. What is that area of your life where things are finally coming together and big goals or projects are nearing completion? If you've got that, this is a good time to pause and really tap into that feeling of accomplishment and study the feelings that make that energy grow. We've got the Hierophant, or what I call the teacher card, for Leo and Leo rising, with the moon in the 9th house of purpose and exploration and learning more about where you really want to put your energy to feel fulfilled. Leo is generally focused on pleasure and passion and all kinds of fun. So for me, in this card, it's a really clear sign to focus on combining your passion and your purpose. And this applies to all of us, finding your purpose in the things that you're really passionate about. This is our first major arcana card, and these usually apply to the bigger themes of life and the greater purpose. So that makes a lot of sense in this position. This is the teacher card in the ninth house, and that's pretty auspicious because this is also the house of learning. This card can represent a Taurus in your life. This is a Taurus card, or at least maybe representing some Taurian energy somewhere in your current experience. But the message is consider the source. And for me, in this case, I think that might be pointing to considering the source of your greatest excitement. What is the source of that emotion, that excitement in your life right now? And how could you pursue that passion as a part of fulfilling your greater purpose? Or to get more passionate about what you're already doing right now and applying all of that energy during this learning phase. We've got the Six of Cups for Virgo and Virgo rising with the moon in the eighth house. That's Scorpio's house, where transformation is always a theme. It points really strongly to a need for studying the cycles of life. And with this card, that could certainly point to studying something from the past that's been recurring or coming up with a lot of emotion. This is the live in the now card, and that certainly doesn't mean that you should ignore the past, but if you look at the message for the card, it's to honor what was and learn from it. And certainly if there's anything from the past that's been affecting your health or your daily routine, this is an opportunity for lasting transformation when you learn to let go and resolve any triggers that take you back into the past and leave all the bad energy back there where it belongs and bring all the good stuff with you into the present moment. That brings us to Libra and Libra rising with the Six of Pentacles. So feeling right at home in the hot seat as the ruler of the seventh house, focused on partnerships and relationships of every kind. There's probably a whole lot of energy at work in your closest relationships. And of course, if you're talking about romantic relationships, but really any of those important relationships or partnerships in your life. Extra energy can be a good thing or a bad thing. It really depends on what's happening in your personal life right now. And for me, it's also a house of finding a healthy balance. And I love the Six of Pentacles for this. He's actually holding that scale, finding the right balance between give and take. And I usually call this the share the wealth card. I think with the extra energy for the full moon here, that could be pointing to sharing your energy in a really balanced and constructive way, letting go of the minor disagreements and really putting your focus on appreciating what you've got in your life right now and loving the people that are important to you without any expectations, just loving them for the sake of loving them. And if, on the other hand, you've got some major issues in some of these big relationships, it might be about letting go, or at least letting go of your expectations of other people and finding your own balance and setting your own boundaries. You're the only one who knows what this means for you, but this is always a card that inspires an authentic expression of generosity on your part. And in this sign, in this house, it's a really good time to be mindful about how you share what you've got to give with the people that you've partnered with. We've got the Four of Cups for Scorpio with the moon in the sixth house, which is ruled by Virgo and applies in so many ways to health and self-improvement of all kinds. For me, the message here is pretty straightforward, especially if there's some stagnancy in that area of your life. If you've been ignoring your health or not really working on creating a daily practice or the daily routines that keep you healthy, or if everything feels disorganized right now, there's anything that's been nagging at you as an area of life that's asking for you to make a change, this is a big opportunity for turning things around. Scorpio is the house of transformation. And with this card and the moon in this position, the energy is almost screaming for your attention. There really is something that you might be missing, and something that you're taking for granted or not appreciating or recognizing. And this is the time to get to work on creating a more healthy lifestyle. If you're in the middle of any kind of health crisis, this is an opportunity to put your focus on healing. Again, you're the only one who knows if this is a time to get up and get moving or a time to rest and take better care of yourself. And even if you're in the middle of a crisis that feels more mental or emotional, this is still an opportunity to turn things around. But you've got to be honest with yourself about where you are right now and the unhealthy areas of life that you might have been ignoring that are calling for your attention now. For Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, we've got the Five of Pentacles, and this is what I call the Keep the Faith card. The moon is in the house of pleasure here for Sagittarius, and since Leo is the ruler of the fifth house, and it's about pleasure and sometimes just about having fun, this card can sometimes indicate feeling like you're being left out in the cold, like maybe you're missing out on some of that fun. But that stained glass window right above the heads of the people out there in the cold is a reminder that help is closer than you think, that hope is closer than you think, that there is at least some amount of comfort and relief nearby, but you're probably going to have to look for it. And this is usually considered a no card, but to me, it's saying no more staying out in the cold. This card in this placement feels like a reminder to look for the energy of the overcomer. Look for the joy. The moon in the fifth house is really very positive. So go look for the good. Look for the areas of life that already bring you pleasure, and absolutely look around to see if there's some that you might have been missing out on that are right there in front of you, or at least within your reach, and take advantage of them. We've got the Three of Swords for Capricorn and Capricorn rising, and this can be a tough card. With the moon in Capricorn's fourth house, focused on home and family, ruled by Cancer, if there's anything painful that's been coming up in that area of your life, this really might be the time to focus on the lessons that need to be learned and any amount of healing that you can facilitate. If you've been super focused on ambitions or work life and ignoring what's going on at home, this is definitely a time to put some of your energy into what's most important there. If you're recovering from some kind of personal heartbreak or even disappointments in your professional life, this might be a time to work on feeling more at home in your home environment and making it a place that feels safe and healing for you. It might be a time to reach out to family members that can offer support right now as you kind of lick your wounds if you're recovering from something. But the biggest energy that stands out for me here feels more like a warning right now. I don't know. You'll have to study that for yourself. But for me, it says put your attention on your home life if you've been ignoring it. There's some heartache that could be avoided if you put your focus on any area that needs healing here before it does turn into a crisis. If there are long-term issues with close family members, this is a good time to put your attention on resolving them. And if your home is in a state of physical disarray, this is a really good time to get your house in order. And we've got another page, the Page of Pentacles for Aquarius and Aquarius rising, with the moon in the third house, working on communication with an emphasis on thought life, and Gemini energy ruling the theme for a card that's very much grounded in the physical realm. But again, all of the pages are in the midst of learning, and this page in particular is in a preparation phase. This is the Get Ready card, and that actually can require quite a lot of thinking and communication with anyone that might be involved in making something happen in the physical realm. This house is also sometimes the two sides to every story house and a place to work through mixed emotions. Both the 11th and the third house can be focused on social interaction, and both signs, Gemini and Aquarius, can be pretty outspoken. So if you've got a whole bunch of conflicting thoughts going through your head right now, or emotions that don't really line up with your plans, this is a good time to start working on getting that energy straight. embracing that willingness to learn and the idea that you might not already know everything, and being willing to adjust your attitude is a really good place to put your attention as you start preparing for action in the next phase. And finally, the Knight of Pentacles for Pisces and Pisces rising. And with the moon in the second house for Pisces, it's probably a good time to come down to earth with some of that Taurus energy in the second house. And that's magnified here with another really grounded card focused on some of the more practical aspects of what you value in your life. Physical possessions and money aside, this can apply to all of the things that you find valuable and important. But sometimes the second house really does have to do with money. If there are emotions running high around financial issues, this might be a time to bring some of those emotions back down to earth. Making responsible financial decisions might be a theme for the next couple weeks. The Knight of Pentacles is the only knight that isn't in motion. He's there just kind of taking his time and considering the next move before he takes it. So maybe this is a time to consider the financial decisions that you're making for the future and how letting go of some of those attachments to things that you don't really need, being maybe a little more responsible with finances, just considering how all of those things could positively impact your plans for the future. So now that we've gone through every card, we want to take a look at all the correlations that can be made from a broader point of view. Paying attention to how many cards are in each suit, and that's easy to identify at a glance with this version's backgrounds. The major arcana cards point to the big picture themes, and the 4 suits are more focused on what's happening in your everyday life. The suit of wands has that fiery energy that helps us set intentions clearly. For me, the suit of swords is all about reflection with the airy energy of thinking, always a reminder for taking time to think before you act. Making plans and paying attention to what's happening in your thought life is a theme. The suit of cups is focused on emotions, and for me, I consider those all to be meditation cards. It's a time to study your emotions and how they're directing your energy. The suit of pentacles represents earth and the way you express yourself in the physical world. Expression cards give you ideas for taking meaningful action, and being able to deconstruct the reading and give yourself something that you can actually do to create a practice from the cards that you've drawn is really what we're looking for here. With every archetype, there is an underlying message, and the big picture theme here is that there is something to learn. Ask yourself, what's the big picture theme for me right now? Is there any area of life that stands out as a place where I really do have something that I need to learn? Or is it a time to embrace or break free from social or spiritual conventions? Is there anyone else involved? Are there mentors that could help, or anyone or anything that's influencing your perspective? With just one intention card in the mix for this reading, there is very clearly an opportunity, and you have to ask yourself, what is it? Is it simply to take advantage of this opportunity to work on what's happening on the inside? Or is there something bigger? Is there a project in the works, or a plan, or a goal that just needs a couple weeks to sort itself out? And a little bit of time for you to zero in on the energy to clearly set that intention for taking action in the next phase. All 3 reflection cards have something to teach you, but you have to be willing to ask yourself some of those hard questions. So, what do you need to see? Where is the lesson to be learned? There are probably some decisions that need to be made. There may be some restriction or self-limiting beliefs that need to be addressed. These are the thinking and writing cards, and I always recommend some time for journaling to help you explore those thoughts. Swords are sometimes seen as the more difficult cards, but there's usually an underlying lesson that's really worth exploring. We've got 3 cups, all giving you something to meditate on, and all pretty focused on any opportunities or possibilities that you might be missing. Look at any feelings or beliefs that might be stuck in the past. What are the feelings that are coming up for you right now? Are there any feelings that you've been suppressing? Take the time to meditate on the underlying message of emotion. That's always our goal for these cards. With 4 expression cards, the emphasis for this reading on the physical plane is on getting ready to do something. Getting ready to make your move because there is a move to make. And if you need help getting ready, ask for it. Help is probably closer than you think. Is it time to ask for help? Are there resources that you may have been overlooking? What could you do to prepare for whatever comes next? Get ready for it. Don't give up on what you want. Remember, the waning moon is a great time to do the work that it takes to get ready for taking action. And your ability to respond to any opportunity or challenge that lies ahead effectively will absolutely grow if you're willing to do that work. So here we are taking one more look at the houses in the template for the spread. And I usually take a picture of the reading before I start breaking it down. This is when I usually go back to that picture to see if there's anything that I might have missed. And we're just going to explore a couple of the correlations that can be made here. One that I'm always looking for is a direct progression from one card to the next in the same suit. And we've got just one from the Page of Pentacles to the Knight of Pentacles. That's the last 2 cards that we drew, and the energy that moves from the page to the knight of the same suit almost always says you're making progress. Learning what you need to know to get ready, practicing and improving your skills, and in this case with an emphasis on the responsible application of your resources and energy. Over here on the top right, we've got 3 different suits with similar energies. We've got the 4 of Cups, the 5 of Pentacles, and the 3 of Swords. And they're all, interestingly enough, about looking for the good things that you've got right now, even when you're not in the greatest situation. Bringing your attention into the present moment. And all of them have a little bit of that call for healing in the mix. And we do have one direct correlation with numerology over here on the far right, moving directly from the 6 of Cups to the 6 of Pentacles. And for me, since 6s are usually about healing or helping others or being there for the people that are important to you in a healthy way, there is a focus on harmony and balance here. And that does mean there's something to study about harmony in your important relationships. We've only got that one major arcana card and the archetype of the teacher set between 2 cups. One of them is a page, so I think there's definitely something to learn about the energy of emotion throughout this entire spread. We've got 3 of the 4 pages here, all representing the energy of the student. And they're spread out a little bit across the reading, but all of them are preceded by swords. And for me, that really points to the lesson to be learned from those 3 swords cards. And finally, we've got the first and last cards, and they can very often represent the beginning and the end of our little story here that we're studying, but sometimes the question and the eventual answer. And if we're looking at the overall energy of this spread, I think it really points to opening yourself up to a new level of awareness in regard to all the opportunities that come with this full moon. There might be things that you need to let go of. If this is an intense time for you, there might be some lessons that you need to learn. But in the end, the answer to all of those questions is working to apply your energy more responsibly. And I might not be an astrologer, but I actually am an intuitive coach and a card reader. And first and foremost, I'm a spiritual seeker. And I'm a teacher. So my goal for everything on this channel and all the content I create is to keep the ongoing investigation of the self interesting and to provide effective tools for studying yourself more deeply. This really is a very practical approach to card reading, and I think that's what makes this kind of self-study extra special. In the future, we won't go into quite so much detail. That's what this tutorial is for. But this is the way that I like to read the cards. For me, it's not something fast and furious. It's methodical, and that makes it useful and accessible for everyone in so many different ways. And that doesn't mean that it's not intuitive. I actually believe this is how you grow your own intuition. I can tell you what I see in the cards, but I want to help you study the cards for yourself and open yourself up to what you see in them. There are so many tools that we can apply to the self-study practice, and I do think astrology is one way to keep it really interesting. And I'll put links for the deck and the guidebook and a few sites for determining your rising sign in the description. Card reading is such a great way to randomize an ongoing self-study practice. And if you take the time over the next couple weeks to study the cards as prompts for exploring your inner world and what you might really need to release, you really will learn something about working with the energy of the moon and how letting go of what no longer serves you prepares you for the next phase. And at some point, taking time to celebrate the lessons that can be learned from the sometimes uncomfortable emotions that come up with the full moon, and honoring the process of clearing out your own energy field in a really practical way becomes a regular practice. And it's a reminder to make space for all the good stuff that's on its way in.